All right. Dennis, welcome to the Freedom Fries Real Estate Podcast. We're very excited to have you. And for some reason, I'm getting always outnumbered here with two Navy guys to one Army guy. So, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit on the show tonight.
I'm sure we will.
Dennis, tell the world a little bit about yourself, and let's get after this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a husband. I'm an outdoor enthusiast. I am absolutely a washed up rugby and lacrosse player. And now, as a result, I'm a recreational triathlete at best. I'm an entrepreneurial and small business investor. I'm a bourbon drinker.
Nice.
I am a Traeger grill guy. I'm a retired naval officer, former ship captain. And now I'm a Columbia University certified leadership and small business coach.
Awesome. And he's most famous for where he got his start in the 22nd Company at the U.S. Naval Academy, class of 1996, living next door to yours truly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys were roommates?
We weren't roommates. We were pretty much across the hall, right, Dennis?
Yeah,
we were pretty much
company mates.
Yeah, we were company mates.
Dennis, be honest with the people. Was Spiros any good at rugby, or is he all talk?
He was good. He was, if I remember correctly, he was a back though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you start talking about rugby, you've got the backs,
right?
And then you have the forwards who actually do all the work.
Sure.
So
we just score the points and get the base.
That's right. Yeah, we set the foundation for them to score all the points and brag about scoring all the points. Even
That's awesome.
25, 30 years later. So
that's awesome. So Dennis, tell us a little bit about your a little brief recap of your military career, and then how you get into the business world post military life, and how that transition was, and any obstacles that you came across.
That's
Which I'm sure.
Question,
yeah, I know.
Yeah, we'll dive into it. So again, went to the Naval Academy. Had a conversation last night talking to some Boy Scouts up here in New Hampshire about, hey, why did you go to the Naval Academy and not West Point? Because I got recruited to play lacrosse at both, and it was really pretty simple.
What's
I don't know
that?
if you've ever been to West Point, in January, it's a pretty great place.
I was there for the last 2 years, so I know a little bit about it.
Yeah. I knew that, right?
Yeah.
So, imagine going for your recruiting weekend to West Point in January.
So that's a very hard sell.
Yeah. And I was staying with a plebe, so I was like, "Oh, this place is awful." And then I go to the Naval Academy in late April.
All right.
So
that's all you need to say.
Yeah. And I was running around a bunch of juniors and seeing what life was going to be like.
Sure.
What no one told me was that life on the Chesapeake Bay is just as gray and shitty, in January as it is on the Hudson, on the Hudson River in
Sure.
So did that. Went, like I said, I started as a lacrosse player, left as a rugby guy. And I will say that I think the life lessons from being a rugby player at the Naval Academy have served me throughout, my career as a naval officer and, as an athlete afterwards. And so was a surface warfare officer. So I was a ship driver. Never thought that I was going to make it a career, Mike. But I ended up doing that. Did a bunch of, a couple of deployments. Then I got selected to go back to the Naval Academy as an instructor. So I taught leadership in the morning, and then I coached rugby in the afternoon.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was, best tour I had.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then, didn't plan to make it a career. Actually went back to the reason that I said yes to going to teaching leadership at the academy is because they always had all these hiring conferences, usually like 2 a week. And, they had all the alphabet soup folks from DC. And then they had all the the corporate folks looking for service academy grads that had leadership experience out in the fleet.
Sure.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And then, so didn't really have a plan. But then, you know what? That's this thing called September 11th happened.
Yeah.
And the the Navy was like, hey, what do you think about staying? What do you think about getting a master's degree, hanging out in Annapolis for an extra year, and we'll give you a signing bonus? I'm like, that sounds like a good plan for a dude that didn't have a plan.
Like sign me up.
Yeah, it was like a threefer. And so then, I signed on for a couple more years, did my department head ride as a weapons and combat systems officer on a cruiser. And then got orders to go to the Naval War College and did that for a year. And then because I was a ship driver that, went to, the Joint Planners course and had a subspecialty in counterinsurgency, they sent me to Afghanistan for a year.
I was going to say, you're painting yourself in a very tight niche that only certain people could do.
Yeah. That's where that was going.
So this
I don't know that I did, but if I was an Army guy.
This goes back to the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly.
Yep.
So,
and while I was there, I got screened for command. So left there and then went to, the command pipeline. And then I did my XO and CO float ride. And we could talk about some of the challenges with that. And then I went from that to, 4th Fleet, U.S. Naval Forces Southern Command as the future ops guy. And then I retired in 2016 and decided, the leadership arena and the leadership and small business coaching space was where I wanted to go. One, because I had a background in it. 2, because I got energized by it. And 3, because my wife is in the corporate space. And I needed to make sure that I had a career and a profession that could support her career advancement and give me, an opportunity to do cool stuff.
So Dennis, let me ask you that before we go to your kind of current life, I want to ask you about that transition, getting out of the military. A lot of the folks that listen to Freedom Fries or possibly at, a lot of times active duty and they're thinking about getting out, they're scared to do it because they don't know what to see on the other side. So I'd like you to anchor on that, pre-decision, the decision, the transition, and then how it felt soon thereafter.
So I think it's important to kind of lay some groundwork because I had an opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff in my career. So much so that if you go down to Washington D.C. and you go to the Navy Memorial, you can actually see my name inscribed on the side of it for operational excellence. And so it's awesome, right? But you fast forward to when I was in command, and had an awesome time in command until I didn't. And what happened? Well, we were supporting the 2014 Sochi Olympics, and that I don't know what they call it in the Army, but it was a national tasking mission. So the important people in DC were getting briefed about what we were doing because we were there for presence ops, close enough that you could be on the bridge wing and throw your binoculars up and you can literally see the Olympic torch. We were there, we were on station, and then we had to check off station to go get gas and groceries on the other side of the Black Sea. And when we were entering port, we had an operational mishap, ran aground. For those non-maritime folks, that means your propeller hit the dirt and actually broke the propeller, and we were deemed non-operational in a really heightened time in the Black Sea. And what does that really mean? I went from being on top of the world personally and professionally, and then being in the deepest, darkest valley you could be in personally and professionally, because 2 weeks after that, I got fired. And rightly so, right? Because as a commanding officer, you're absolutely responsible and accountable for what your crew does. So, my transition, because I was at my 18-year point. And so the next 2 years I spent, figuring out whether or not, that canoe club that, put my name, on the Navy Memorial was going to keep me in, or if they were going to keep me in, or are they going to kick me out? If they're going to kick me out, what does that mean? I mean, it was literally $1 million question in terms of,
Right.
what does your retirement look like? You're
Sure.
going to retire as a commander. You're going to retire.
Yeah, a lot of implications from that.
Yeah. So my transition, Spiros, was not as clean cut as everyone else's.
Right.
But they looked at my record and they said, "Wow, you know what? This dude had one really bad day at sea in a 20, at that point, an 18 and a half year career." So the Navy said, "Yeah, you know what? You could stay here, and if you want, you could stay here until your 28-year mark." And I was like, you know what? I've had command. And for those folks that have had command, that's all you want, right?
Yeah.
You just want to command again. And I wasn't going to have that opportunity. So I was like, all right, well, what do I want to do next? And I started going through some transition programs. One was Operation New Uniform in Jacksonville, Florida. And the most helpful part of that was this connection exercise. And they had you identify, kind of your quick reaction force, right? Your aces, the guys or gals that would always answer your call, regardless of the time of day, regardless of the subject. And you had to ask them to introduce you to their 5, right? So then you had 25 conversations with already vetted dudes and dudettes, right? Because they're the quick reaction force and we're quick reaction force. And so amazing conversations, right? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what the outside world looked like because, I spent up to that point, I had spent 3 days of my adult life not in the military. If you count a service academy experience,
that's
right?
very common for people in the military around the world today. So that's
So I I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Long Island guy, and June 28th I graduated because there was a bunch of snow days, right? And 2 days later, I saw Spiros.
Wow,
at the Naval
that's
Academy.
amazing.
Right, the 3 days between I'm a high school kid to I'm at the Naval Academy trying to figure out life, and so those 25 conversations super helpful. Right. And across the spectrum, right? So IBM executives, craft brewery owners, pastors, investment bankers, wealth managers, canine police officers, CrossFit gym owners, you name it, I got to talk to them. And it just gave me a perspective that I just didn't have before. And it allowed me to look at things differently. And one of the people I talked to was actually in learning in development. And we had actually been friends through, some mutual friends. And, she said, how come you're not getting into coaching? And me not having the perspective that I probably needed, I reverted back to when I was a rugby coach at the Naval Academy. And I was like, yeah, I would love to do that.
You tackled her? You tackled her?
What's that?
You tackled the poor girl?
Yeah. Well, actually, we were at lunch, so I didn't tackle her. But then we spent 45 minutes of her educating me about what an executive coach or leadership coach was, and I said, yeah, I think that makes sense.
And that, Dennis, was that your introduction to how you broke into the coaching world? That conversation at lunch? Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. And then a random conversation between my wife and somebody that she worked with. Because they said, hey, Dennis is getting ready to retire. What is he going to do? And she's like, he likes that leadership stuff. He's probably going to get into that. And so that person said, well, have you talked to this person? And of course, my wife was like, well, why would I talk to her? Well, because her husband is a partner at a leadership development firm. Oh, okay. So my wife talked to that person talked to her husband, that husband emailed me. I was in Jacksonville at the time. He was in Tampa, drove to Tampa for lunch, and kind of told him my story. And he's like, yeah, we need to work together. And I've been working with him, that company for the past 7 years.
So you kind of make it sound like, your transition was kind of you're that steel ball in the pinball machine, right? And just like random things are happening. So that's kind of a segue into, you're also an author, and you wrote a book called Transition on Purpose.
Yeah.
So you're making it sound like it was all sort of happenstance, but then you write a book to other people, kind of instructing them to transition on purpose. So tell us a little bit about what the inspiration was for you to write that book.
The inspiration to write that book really came from people telling me, you need to write a book. And I knew the only way to stop the noise was to write a book.
Got it.
So that was the inspiration. But it was a cathartic experience, right? Because for somebody who didn't have a plan many, many moons ago about whether he was going to stay or go in the military, or stay, you could take the military out of the equation, right? You could just put a corporate job or whatever in there. And I was really lucky because when I went through all of that, professional turmoil, I had a mentor who said, you know what, you got to get myopically focused on something other than your shitty reality. Pardon my French. And because otherwise it's going to defeat you. And he was 100% right. Because at that point in time, what I did was who I was, and who I was what I did. And taking the time and giving myself the time and space to unlock those things, right? My role versus my identity was priceless. And how did that happen? I got into triathlon. And it gave me the time and space, whether it was training form or the actual event, to understand me, right? To understand who I was, what mattered to me, what my values were, how I defined success in life, what my expectations were of me and the people I spent time with, and what I was going to do. Because that's what really mattered, right? Is literally taking a step in a direction and moving. And if it wasn't for that conversation, I'm not really sure where I'd be today. And so literally after that conversation, got home, was trying to find the end of the internet for some reason or another. And then this little, pop-up ad came up that said, Miami 70.3. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, no.
Yes. And, lucky it was like 6 months later, because at that point in time, Mike, the last time I did any swimming was probably when I was a first year.
That's tough.
Right? Of any level, right? So like 20 years before, I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, so I had like a beach cruiser. I did not have a proper bicycle, but the only thing I could do was run. So at least 33% of that triathlon I was going to.
You knew you could crush one leg of that triathlon.
That's right. And a lot of people will make fun of me. They're like, "Why is the swim so hard for you?
Yeah,
you're a Navy guy. I'm a Navy ship guy, right? So I'm not a SEAL. I'm not an EOD diver. So if I was swimming in the water during my career, things had gone horribly wrong. Not a good thing. So but when you think about it from like a personal leadership perspective, the sport of triathlon really prepares us for life. You've got two concrete transition periods in this sport, and if you're not present in the present, right? If you don't finish the swim on time,
right,
the bike doesn't matter, and the run doesn't matter. And similarly, if you don't meet the time hacks for the bike,
right,
then the run doesn't matter. And you got those transitions, which are literally time and space for you to get your mind right and focus on what really matters right now.
When you say you found yourself in the training for the triathlon, is that like exactly how it sounds like. You were in your zone by yourself, and you had the ability to kind of go through your thoughts while you're on the rower, or while you're running on the treadmill, or riding a bicycle, and you're just kind of deciphering through different things and discerning what's important, what's not important. Is that what you mean?
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I mean, Mike. I mean, up to that point in time in my life, I didn't really know what
Right.
my core values were. I knew what the
Yeah.
core values of the Navy was, right?
Yeah.
Honor, courage, and commitment. Yeah, I did more push-ups and athletic stuff to those things than I care to remember. But I was literally able to dig into me to say what really
Yeah.
matters to me, and autonomy matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
Impact matters to me. Connection
Yeah.
matters to me, and
Sure.
security matters to me. And now that's
Hmm.
how I make decisions. Whether it's about the investments I make, the people I spend time with, the work that I do, whatever. How does that impact, or what's
Yeah.
my autonomy?
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think people struggle to this day. No matter where you are in life, it's hard to sit, to unplug, so to say, to just sit down, listen to your thoughts, figure out what's important and what's not important, who's really in your circle, who's not in your circle. Because I know, at least personally, if I've had to, get some people out of my circle who were supposed, in my circle, and they're not, and it's hard. It's a learning process, and it's growing pains, and you have to figure that out. And I think military, non-military, it's just part of life, trying to figure, taking that time of growing and maturity to figure out what's important to you, who's important to you, and how you use those to your benefit to take the next step in life. Yeah.
100%. And I spent some time with a good friend who's also a mentor, and
Yeah.
they're also a coach. And we were talking about that very topic, Mike. And the phrase that they used was, you got to realize, and it's a tough realization, that you have
Mm-hmm.
friends for a season, you
Yeah.
have friends for a reason, and then you
Yep,
also have
that's
friends
so
for
true,
life.
man. I'm stealing that from you.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
have to look at the reasons, you have to look at the seasons, and then you just have to look at the people that that are always
Yeah.
going to have your back,
100%.
no
I
matter
love
what.
that. I love it.
And I'll tell you, I'm going to brag on Dennis here for a second. On our rugby team, our motto was "with you." So it was something you said on the field a lot. And it was usually the guy that has the ball, will go into contact, and then somebody will come behind there and put their hand on the small of your back and say, "I'm with you." Dennis was always that guy. He epitomizes that with you. I can tell you a bunch of stories. We went one spring break, we went to the Appalachian Mountains and climbed a few mountains. And it was me, Dennis, and two other guys from our company. And me and the two other guys we're like, we want to be the hot shits, right? We want to run up the mountain, run back, run up the mountain again. Dennis is the kind of guy that kind of starts out at the bottom, and he takes one step at a time. And as I'm trying to sprint up the hill and dying and end up on my face, Dennis comes by, one step at a time. He's like, "Hey
That's
man, can I
awesome.
help you out? Can I help you out?" And again, with rugby, he was the kind of guy that would look at somebody and go, "You don't realize this yet, but I'm gonna push you back, and then you're gonna fall, and when you get up, I'm gonna push you back again, and I'm gonna keep doing it." He's just that kind of guy that's consistent. And I can tell you, Dennis, not to get sappy, but you're definitely a friend for life in my book. So
That's awesome. Dennis, I'd love to pick your brain about like so for the last 7 years you've been doing coaching, investor mentoring, things of that nature. And this might be personal to me, but in the world that we're in today, I hear those words a lot. Like I hear you need a coach, you need a mentor, you need something. I don't know if I really could tell you what those things are. I know that might sound crazy, right? But
question.
Like obviously I know what a coach is, right? Like I know someone who you keeps you accountable, or what a mentor does. But I don't know, maybe you can shed a light a little bit at to what you actually do, and how how that could be beneficial to somebody who might be struggling to find a way, and how you can keep them accountable and things like that.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate the question, Mike, because honestly, about 7 years ago, like I said, I didn't even know what it was. there's lots of things or lots of people that you need in your life, and I call it a tribe guy, right? Because we all have to have a tribe, and it starts with your QRF, right? There's a lot of military people that listen to this. You have to have that quick reaction force for your life, and as a ship guy, we had 2 QRFs on ships. Right, one for anti-terrorism and force protection, and one for damage control, right, fire, flooding, and all that stuff. And those were the people that would respond when things were going sideways, and we need that in our lives just as much as we need it in the military. So that's where it all starts, right? So starting with the 5 or 10 people, right, that I know that I can call a phone number in Satellite Beach and say, hey, dude, I got this shit going on. And I know that I'm going to get support. So knowing who those people are, but also spending time to let them know a couple of things, right? Where you're at, where you're going, how you're doing, what are the atmospherics, and then what support you need.
Is that... Dennis, is that an actual, like, so I'm just trying to think real time while you're talking it. So I take 5 people in my contacts who I think would answer right now, and I have a conversation with them and just let them know those things, like, what I'm doing, how they're doing, and let them know they're one of my 5's QRFs. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm doing 100%. It tomorrow.
And let me ask you, Mike, right? What would happen if I called you on the phone, right? Let's say you and I had known each other for a couple of years, maybe even a couple of decades. And I called you up and I said, hey, Mike, you know what? This coach dude, right? He told me about this QRF thing and that I needed it in my life, and I needed people that I could depend on to provide me with the accountability that I need and the support that I want in life. So that way I can succeed faster. And you're one of those dudes.
I would be astonished. I would say, how grateful me of all people. Yeah.
And then, right, you're going to feel grateful for it. But the last thing that we want to do, right, is burden other people. So we don't want to make that call ourselves.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
So, and I call that, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going, this is how I'm doing, and, this is the support I need. That's kind of a position report that a Navy ship uses when they're out at sea. Like every 4 hours, you got to tell people where you're at, where you're going, how you're doing. And where did that actually come from? It actually came from World War II, of all things, right? Because we didn't have position reports back then. We didn't have GPS. We didn't have any of that stuff. So have you ever heard of the USS Indianapolis?
I have.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Big heavy cruiser. Delivered the atomic bomb to the island of Tinian, and then got sunk on its way back to San Francisco. And the majority of the crew got eaten by sharks. But nobody knew where the ship was because they didn't have, a coherent, they being the Navy, didn't have a coherent positioning system. That doesn't surprise
me. Navy, they're never...
I'm
just messing.
Right? So, but then they started this position report. So now I force people to have their own personal position report. Hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going. This is how I'm doing. This is support I need. And if you're not willing to do that, what you're telling me as a coach, as a mentor, then you're okay getting eaten by sharks.
That's powerful because to be honest with you, I'm honest for the listeners. I'm hesitant about calling my 5 people. I don't know why. I'm just hesitant about making that phone call because, and I think this might be part military. I think I could do it on my own, and I'm sure you probably hear this often. And I could do it on my own, and I don't want to bother anyone. And I don't know, but I think I'm going to try it now that the way that you're explaining it.
Let me ask you a question, Mike, because we don't know each other. As
this is going to turn into like a personal coaching session for me, Spiro. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's all good.
What sports growing up?
I played college basketball, so I played all grown up, high school, and college.
So basketball, okay. And you spent time in the Army.
I was 27 Alpha Judge Advocate for the Army.
Got it. So the last time I checked, basketball is a team sport, yeah? Yeah. And what happens, and, it's not 100% accurate, but what happens when somebody tries to go at it alone on the basketball court?
First of all, you're probably going to lose, and second of all, you're going to lose all your teammates because no one wants to play with that person.
Right. So let's put that into exactly what you just said about a minute and a half ago.
I hear it, man. Yeah, that's powerful.
Why is it okay to do it on the basketball court?
I know, man. That's I'm with you 100%. I promise you I'm going to do it tomorrow. And it's funny that we're talking about basketball because the 5 people that are in my mind are all, I've probably met them on the basketball court, throughout my life. So, oh, man.
Yeah, when you start thinking about the relationships that you have, and the relationships that matter, very often it's from
absolutely
shared adversity. And you have that ability to reflect on those things. And when the chips are down, that guy or that girl is going to have your back. And that's what life's all about, right? Life is a contact sport, right? I've gotten knocked down. I know the two of you have gotten knocked down once or twice, right? But it's also a team sport. And the cool part is you get to pick your team. That's the awesome part. But you also talked about, what else is part of that tribe guide, right? Mentors. Those guys or gals who have done what you want to do in the way that you want to do it. So they can actually show you the way. But then the next step, right, is you also need sponsors who are kind of like mentors, but kind of like a 2.0 version because they've done what you want to do in the way that you want to do it. And not only can they show you the way, but they can actually clear the way for you and provide opportunities. And then you got to make sure you've got the connectors, right? The guys like you and Spiros that know people and can connect people to other people and are okay doing that. And then you also need the energizers. Those people that you can, no kidding, plug into. When you're like, what? I'm having a crappy day. And who's that person in your phone that you're like, what? I just want to talk to them for like 5 minutes. And your battery just goes.
Yep.
And you're like,
everybody has one of those in their corner.
And
yeah,
and if you don't, you need one. And then obviously, the other piece of that is the trusted colleagues, right? The teammates that that are there that could provide the perspective and insight and knowledge and education that you may need based on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, that's
what the coach, in Dennis's opinion, is somebody who unlocks human performance. But to unlock human performance, it goes back to kind of that. I was lucky enough to go through the Columbia coaching program. And the reason I loved it is because it was simple for this Navy guy. And 3 big overarching questions. What's up? What matters? What's next? All right. So what's going on? Let's look at reality. What matters, right? What's that desired reality? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges that might exist? What are your support requirements? Notice my guy didn't say, what do you need help with, right? I get to work with military people.
That's exactly what I was picking up on.
I need support.
Right.
And then, all right, so based on where you're at, based on where you want to go, based on how you're doing, what support you need, what are we going to do? What steps are you going to take?
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think, personally, we obviously talk a little bit about real estate on this podcast, but I think also regardless of what your passions are, what your investment goals are, just by having those conversations and having that support, like you said, and having those different discussions with different people. I mean, look at your lunch, your lunch conversation, for example. Just by talking and having that conversation, it put you in the room that you needed to be in. And if you didn't go out and have those conversations and talk to those people and tell them about what your aspirations are, who knows where you are right now. Yeah.
100%. And the awesome thing about, at least in my experience in the veteran community, is when you let people know what you want to do and you let people know why you want to do it, the vast majority of military veterans are going to absolutely provide you 100%. With support.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Mike, you and I have experienced the real estate accelerator together. And I think one of the toughest things I had to do early on was to identify myself as a real estate investor well before I was a real estate investor. But remember, it's kind of like putting it out there, like, this is who I am. And you're kind of, and obviously you're not that person yet, but what you're telegraphing to people is, this is who I want to be. And I want you to be a part of it. I want you to know it. And maybe you're not the one who can support me but maybe you know somebody, so it's kind of an extreme networking tactic to just put it out there and say, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. Like you said, Dennis, what's up, what matters and where am I going? Right. And then people get attracted to that person that's willing to come out and say, this is where I'm heading in life. And I'd love for you to join me for the ride if you can,
Yeah. And, there's that African proverb out there, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with friends.
Go with friends, yeah.
And, when I moved up to New Hampshire to support my wife's career, at the time, I only knew one physical human in the state of New Hampshire. And I hired a coach. I actually hired a transition coach because I was kind of lost. And for a guy who wrote a book about transition, right? And I remember my wife coming home from work one day, and I'm standing here and I'm watching a Brene Brown TED Talk about openness and vulnerability. And, my wife walks in the front door because that's where my office is, and she's listening to this TED Talk, and she's like, I know you look like my husband, but what have you done with him?
That's awesome.
And 100% though, right, to what Spiros talked about, we have to be open and we got to be vulnerable about who we are and where we want to go, because we don't have all the answers. I was lucky enough. I got asked to talk to a Boy Scout troop last night about personal leadership, and of course, these young guys are like, well, what's the one thing? Yeah. What's the one thing? And based on your experience, what's the one thing? And I'm like, there's more than one thing, but if I could boil it down to one thing, is never ever be the smartest person in the room. Because if you are, you're in the wrong room.
I love it. That we got to clip it, Spiros. That's it right there.
I just hit.
I love that, Dennis.
I hit the button.
I live by that personally, right? I don't think I've ever actually said that, but I always live by that. Like, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be the hardest working person in the room, because that's my thing. I outwork everybody. I put in the hours when I need to, but I want to learn from the people who are smarter than me, and that they've done this and they can teach me, right? I want to be a part of that group. So I love that, man. That's freaking awesome.
100%. And Spiros has known me for a really long time, and he knows I never have to worry about being the smartest guy in the room.
That's awesome, Dennis.
Dennis, tell us what you're working on now. What business idea or who are you listening to right now?
Well, you and I had some conversations a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Some real estate opportunities that may exist down there in South Florida. But I had a conversation with a young man today who's looking for some private money.
Yep.
Because he wants to start flipping houses and get into that real estate space. And for me, one of the things that matters to me, we talked about values, right? Is impact. And how do you help, those men and women that want to create a legacy that matters, that wants to follow, that path of purposeful work, and they just need a little bit of a boost.
Yep.
And so we talked about, what does that look like from a financial perspective? What does that look like from a partnership perspective? And in a few months, we're going to slap the table. We're going to sign some papers, and we're going to help him get to where he wants to go. So that's one. I've got a friend out in Montana who, very similar situation, was looking for some private money to create like a VRBO option outside of Bozeman, Montana. And so I said, yeah. Not only do I want to invest in it, but I want to be part of it, from an equity position, so that way I could leverage some of the coaching that I do from a small business perspective to help him get to where he wants. Not just him, because it's a family-owned business, for him and his family to create that legacy that they're looking for. And what I've seen as a small business coach is very often it's one of three things, if not all of them, that small business owners are looking for, or that they need. And the first is clarity about what success looks like, and taking the time to dig into that, to say, how have you defined success for whatever this is? And what I've seen, in the past 7 years is people haven't taken the time. And I'm working with, a small construction company up here in New Hampshire. And that, the founder CEO of that company, had clarity of success, but he didn't have clarity of reality. And what I mean by that is he didn't know his numbers. So he was making uninformed decisions about the work that he was doing, the nature of the work, right, and the amount of work. So helping those business owners find clarity is one of the things that I try to do. And then alignment of energy, effort, and attention, right? Because once you identify what matters, that's where your energy, attention, and effort needs to go.
Yeah.
And then creating a structure that makes sense. There's all of those, programs out there, whether it's EOS or whatever, but you got to find the program that fits you, your personality, and how you, and your mindset, and how you like to do things. I was a ship driver, right? So I am definitely not an aviator like Spiros was, but CAS, right? Clarity, alignment, structure. It's like close air support for your small business.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's cool. Well, I'll tell you what I'm hearing is Mike, we have our first hard money lender on the call.
Once Dennis started talking private money.
So for all of you listeners out there that have projects and things going on, and you're looking for not only a couple of bucks to help you either get going or get over the finish line, hey, reach out to us. Yeah. Through our Instagram or wherever you find us, reach out to us. We'll get you in contact with Dennis.
Yeah, they know a guy.
And we know a guy. We know a guy, and not only will you get money, but I think you're going to get a little bit of coaching too, included in the package. Yeah, whether you like it or not.
I'm actually going to it's called New England Invents, and it's actually a military pitch competition.
Oh, wow.
For active duty military veterans and spouses, to see, what kind of ideas are out there, what kind of businesses are out there that may or may not need funding.
Cool.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, Dennis, tell our listeners how they can find you, like on your social channels and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I am absolutely a LinkedIn guy.
Okay.
I probably spend too much time on there. But
Good.
yeah, you can find me on there. You can find me on my website, which is dennis-volpe.com. And you can also find me through Spiros. He knows how to get a hold of me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Dennis, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on. You brought kind of every one of these podcasts that we do bring a different perspective to the investment community, to the veteran community, to dudes in general. It's been really cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me and Mike. And
yeah, Dennis, I can't thank you enough, man. I know that everybody's busy these days, and for you to take an hour out of your night to talk to us two bozos and give us some life lessons and school us. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the personal coaching session here. I got one on the arm here.
Anytime,
So
brother, anytime.
Dennis, again, like I echo everything Spiro said. This was fantastic. And this is going to be really helpful for our community for what we're trying to build and just, life lessons all around. So really appreciate your time, man.
Go Navy, beat Army.
What you guys are doing, not only creating a community, but I think it's actually one step beyond a community. I think based on what I know and what I've seen happen, you guys are creating an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem that's not only connected, but it actually works together and to create the environment for everybody to succeed.
That's the goal, man. Yeah. And that's what keeps us, I think that's what keeps me and Spiros motivated, honestly, just to keep going at this. And, we don't get anything as a kickback or anything. We're just doing this out of, our appreciation of our community, and think it's an easy way for us to give back. Yep. So yeah, man, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. Those are things that kind of keep us going. So keep the lights on, so to say.
Oh, that's man. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Dennis, thanks again. I'm not letting Spiros talk on purpose because I know what he's going to try to say. So I'll end this call with it is Army Navy week. It's Army Navy week, and we all know that Army will come home victorious as always. So